Hello everyone, I am Demented Kirby, and welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Stage is a series on this channel where games are played in the Commander Tavern for your entertainment. On this episode of The Stage, we have a 3DH match between a Polukranos World Eater Big Mana deck piloted by yours truly, an Edgar Markov Vampire Tribal deck piloted by Gabriel, and a Feather the Redeemed Voltron deck piloted by William. I keep an opening hand of Amulet of Vigor, City of Solitude, Avenger of Zendikar, Craterhoof Behemoth, Mirren the Moaning Well, and 2 Forests. Gabriel keeps an opening hand of Bloodline Keeper, Vicious Conquistador, Stoneforge Masterwork, Sanctum Seeker, Orchov Guildgate, Plains, and Blood Artist. And William keeps an opening hand of Mask of Avacyn, Rogue's Passage, Clifftop Retreat, Krenko, Tin Street Kingpin, and 3 Plains. I win the die roll, so I start the match. I draw a card, play a forest, and tap it to cast Amulet of Vigor. I then pass. Gabriel draws a card, then plays a tapped Orchov Guildgate, and passes. William draws a card, plays a Plains, and passes. I untap, draw a card, play a second forest, and pass. Gabriel draws a card, plays a swamp, then taps it to cast Vicious Conquistador, triggering Edgar Markov's Eminence ability, creating a 1/1 black vampire creature token. He then taps the Guildgate to cast Stoneforge Masterwork. He then passes. William untaps, draws a card, plays an untapped Clifftop Retreat, then taps out to cast Mask of Avacyn. He then passes. I untap, draw a card, play Mirren the Moaning Well, then tap out to cast City of Solitude. William didn't like that play since he enjoys playing instants targeting Feather at the end of the turn before his. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, plays a Plains, then taps 2 to cast Blood Artist, once more triggering Edgar's Eminence. He then enters combat, declaring the Conquistador at William and the token at me. We each lose 1 life due to the Conquistador's triggered ability. Neither of us declare any blocks and take 1 damage from combat, for a total of 2 life lost this turn. He then passes. William draws a card, plays a Plains, and taps out to cast Feather. He then passes. I untap, draw a card, and play Gaia's Cradle. This card is crazy in Stompy decks, but at this moment in time, I would have preferred to drop another land in order to cast my commander this turn. Still, I tap 3 and cast Ashnod's Altar. I then pass. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, drops another Plains, then taps out to slam Sanctum Seeker on the battlefield, triggering Edgar's Eminence ability and Facepalm. He then enters combat, declaring the Conquistador attacking William and 2 vampire tokens attacking me. Sanctum Seeker and Vicious Conquistador trigger, causing William and myself to lose 4 life in total, while Gabriel gains 3 life. William blocks the Conquistador with Feather. Damage resolves, I take 2 combat damage, and the Conquistador dies in combat, triggering Blood Artist. Gabriel targets William with the trigger, gaining 1 life from him losing that life. He then passes. William untaps, draws a card, and plays another Plains. He then taps 3 to cast a Manalith. He then passes. I untap, draw a card, laugh aloud because it's clearly not a mana-producing land, then pass. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, then taps out to cast Bloodline Keeper, triggering Edgar Markov. He then enters combat, declaring attacks to me with Sanctum Seeker and 3 vampire tokens. The Seeker triggers cause William and myself to lose 4 life, and Gabriel to gain 4 life. I can't block anything, so I take 6 combat damage. He then passes after combat. William untaps, draws a card, drops yet another Plains, casts Defiant Strike targeting Feather. The spell is exiled with a delayed trigger, and William draws a card. He then pays 3 to equip Mask of Avacyn to Feather. At the end of his turn, the Defiant Strike goes to his hand from exile, and he passes the turn. I untap, draw a card, which isn't a land, but I'm able to tap 3 to cast Loxodon Warhammer. I then pass. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, then pays 3 to cast the game's second white border Ashnet's Altar, for the lulz. He pays 1 to transform Bloodline Keeper into Lord of Lineage. He then enters combat. He attacks me with Sanctum Seeker and 4 tokens, triggering the Seeker. William and I lose 5 life, while Gabriel gains 5 life. I declare no blocks and take 17 combat damage, losing the game. Removing me removed City of Solitude, so William casts Defying Strike, targeting Feather, at the beginning of Gabriel's second main phase, drawing him a card. At the end of the turn, Defiant Strike returns to his hand. William untaps, draws and plays a Plains. He then taps 2 to cast a Pacifism on Lord of Lineage. In response, Gabriel taps it to create a 2/2 vampire creature token with flying. William then pays 1 to cast Defiant Strike once more, targeting Feather, drawing him a card. He then pays 3 to cast Veilstone Amulet. He then ends his turn, returning Defiant Strike to his hand. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, then taps 4 to cast Falconwrath Noble. In response, William pays 1 to once again cast Defiant Strike, targeting Feather, and drawing him a card. The Eminence trigger resolves, so Gabriel gets another 1/1 vampire creature token. Gabriel then enters combat, declaring Sanctum Seeker, 4 vanilla vampire tokens, Blood Artist, and the Flying Vampire token at William, triggering Sanctum Seeker, draining William for 7 life, and gaining Gabriel 7 life. Staring down so many large attackers while only having 1 blocker, William loses to combat damage, and the game comes to an end. William and I had such bad luck at today's game. William kept drawing into lands, and I kept drawing into fatties. Without any kind of blockers early game, Gabriel's deck really took hold with all the Vicious Conquistador and Sanctum Seeker triggers. So the all-stars in today's matchup was definitely Sanctum Seeker and Lord of Lineage. Under any other circumstances, I would have been ecstatic to draw a Gaia's Cradle so early had I had Mana Dorks in play. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I drew into many support cards for Polukranos, but no way to cast it. Had I had a 5/5 on the field that turn, Sanctum Seeker's triggers wouldn't have gotten so out of hand. But I drew Gaia's Cradle instead of literally any of the other 35 lands in the deck. I also didn't draw into any of the Mana Dorks or Mana Rocks. William was just as unlucky. He didn't draw into any other creatures or cantrips. He also didn't draw into anything that would make Feather a larger threat at the table. He was mana flooded, whereas I was mana screwed. Gabriel's deck not only worked like a charm, but he was aggroing out against 2 sitting ducks. That being said, Gabriel's deck didn't even perform as strongly as you'd expect from an Edgar Markov deck. But what I liked about today's game is that William and I didn't have such bad starts. We were in fact playing spells and not durdling or twiddling our thumbs. We just had such slow starts compared to Gabriel. Looking back, maybe I would have been wiser to mulligan and see if I had gotten a faster hand, especially considering how Edgar Markov is one of my opponents. That Eminence ability is no joke. I did have some good early plays like Amulet of Vigor and City of Solitude, which was my original logic for keeping it. White can exile creatures, artifacts, and enchantments at instant speed, while black can also destroy creatures at instant speed. So, having such a creature-heavy deck, I guess I was just so happy to get the city in my opening hand against 2 white players, especially since that hand had 3 lands. Unfortunately, I banked too much on drawing any further mana sources that never came. Hopefully in a future occasion, Polukranos can redeem itself and eat the world much like Jimmy does. I'd like to thank Gabriel and William for their participation in filming today's episode. I want to give a shout out to my Patreons. Thank you for all your support. Last but not least, I also want to thank all of you for watching this episode of The Stage on the Commander Tavern. I am Demented Kirby, and happy playing.